God made some of us so, he has a sense of humor. That's why we play some of these fun videos. And most of those things he rattled off in that minute and a half right there I've heard before. I think a lot of us have heard most of those lines before. But I want to start off with a different story tonight. A teacher asked her children in her Sunday school class, I sold my house and my car, had a huge garage sale, gave all my money to the church, would I get into heaven? No, the children all answered. If I cleaned the church every day, mowed the yard and kept everything neat and tidy, would I get into heaven? Again, the answer was no. Well, the teacher continued, then how do I get to heaven? In the very back of the classroom, you hear a 5-year-old boy shout, you gotta be dead. Today we're going to look into the future a little bit. And reality is the future, we all have to face it. We all have to face the future. But the question I have for you today about your future is, are you ready? Are you truly ready? We all have an appointment at some point in our lives, unless Jesus returns first, with death. We all have that appointment. And we all have a second appointment. And that second appointment is with God. My question today is, are you ready for that appointment? I'm not the type that likes to play the Grim Reaper all the time and remind you that, death is coming. Sorry, I'm not that type. But sometimes we really do have to give it some thought. Some of us have probably spent some time thinking about investing in the future, in our future. We don't want to get to a point in our lives where we cannot take care of ourselves financially. Some of you that are younger, I would start thinking about that a little bit now too. But what are we doing to prepare for our eternal future? In the first 34 verses of Luke chapter 12, Jesus talks on the subject of the folly of fearing man instead of trusting God. But in the following verses, in 35 through 48, he's going to share 3 short parables to illustrate the importance of being ready for the day of Christ's return. Tonight, I want to know, if Jesus came this very minute, right now, would you truly be ready? I also want to look at tonight why we need to always be ready. Let's look at verses 35 through 38 in Luke 12. Be dressed, ready for service, and keep your lamps burning, like servants waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet, so that when he comes and knocks, they can immediately open the door for him. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. Truly I tell you, he will dress himself to serve. He will have them recline at the table and will come and wait on them. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them ready, even if he comes in the middle of the night or toward daybreak. How many of us know when Christ is going to return? Anybody? Anybody got a date? It's because Scripture tells us that nobody knows. Nobody knows. In Mark chapter 13 it says, but of that day or hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven nor the Son, but the Father alone. Take heed, keep on the alert, for you do not know when the appointed time will come. If you don't know when the Lord's going to return, then are we preparing for his return? The other factor in this, though, is the fact that the time of our own deaths is not even known. When you put those two things together, I think it would be pretty wise for us to always be in the state of readiness. In this first parable, Jesus wants us to understand that we are to be watchful and ready at all times. In verse 35, Jesus tells us to be dressed in readiness. The Message version of the Bible says to keep your shirts on and the lights on. Other versions speak of just being ready for action. In Jesus' day, people wore long, the long outer garments, and kind of looked like a robe. But when they were going to do some hard work or have to go on a run, they would pull up the bottom of that robe and kind of tuck it into their belt that they would have had on. So it wouldn't get in the way while they were working or doing whatever. Being dressed and ready for service with the lamps burning describes the servant in the first century who was always waiting for his master's return. In the parable, Jesus says the servants were to be ready for the master's return no matter what was happening. Jesus says that the servants who are alert and ready for the master's return will be blessed. It says that the master will actually serve them. One of the worst things that could happen to a servant in that time would be for them not to be ready when the master walked into the door. William Barclay, in an article, You Can Say That Again, in the Christianity Today, volume 39, says it this way: the best way to prepare for the coming of Christ is never to forget the presence of Christ. How many of us truly think that Christ will return in our lifetime? So, really, if we think about it, like you did, most of us would probably say probably not. How many of us think that today, before we lay our heads on our pillows tonight, we're going to die? Again, do you think that? Probably not. Herein lies the problem. Why be alert? Why be ready if we don't think it's going to happen? If we are aware of the Lord's presence, constant presence, right here in our daily lives, it can change our perspective. And it will change how we live and how we prioritize things in our life. It will make us constantly ready. Look at verse 38. When he stood, whether he comes in the second or the third watch, middle of the night or early in the morning, and Jesus finds us waiting for him and ready to open that door for him, he will bless us. Jesus tells us since the time of his return is unknown, we are to be ready at all times. Are you ready? In the second parable, Jesus tells us of the time of his return, tells us the time of his return will happen at an unexpected time. So verses 39 through 40 say this: but understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect it. Jesus switches the parable here in these verses to illustrate a totally different point about his return. Jesus says that it'll be completely unexpected. Notice how he tells us that if the head of the house knew that the thief was about to break in, it wouldn't happen. How would he stop the thief? By not just watching, but by being prepared. In 1 Thessalonians 5, it says, for you yourselves know full well that the day of the Lord will come just like a thief in the night. I know people who have security systems on their homes. Why? Because they've prepared to help keep that thief out of their house. So not only are we supposed to be watching, but we have to be prepared. If there is no expectation, we're not going to expect it. There's no preparation. This point is close to the point of the first parable. If you do not expect Jesus to return, or if you don't expect to die, then you won't prepare. We do not want to look at it like a young guy at Sunday school one day. To start a discussion on core values, a youth minister asked the teenagers, what would you do if the doctor told you you only had 24 hours to live? The teens mentioned, being with friends, being with family, and the discussion seemed to be headed in the right direction, but it kind of came undone when Jason, a 13-year-old, said, I'd probably get a second opinion. And for those in the military, when they first enter the military, what do? When they first enter the service, they prepare. What do they do before they're sent out into battle? They prepare. Those that have served but were blessed enough to never have to serve in a war, what was one of the first things they learned when entering the military? The same exact thing as those who did go to war. You know, I don't think the military ever really wants to enter into a large-scale war, or any war, but they're always expecting it. They're always ready for it. One of my friends who's in the military would go on all kinds of maneuvers, and even went to Germany at one point just to prepare for a war that wasn't happening. Jesus tells us that he will come at a time when we least expect it. So be ready, just like the militaries are ready for war at all times. I love verse 41. Here Peter, who's always full of questions, is asking again a question that needed to be asked. It says, Peter asked, Lord, are you telling this parable to us or to everyone? But Jesus never really answered Peter's question, but instead gives him another parable. In this one we find not only are we to be expecting the return at any time and therefore being ready and prepared for it, but Jesus in this third parable tells us that he wants to find us faithful when he comes. You know, you can't just be prepared. It's one thing to be prepared. Okay, yeah, he's coming. But he wants us to be faithful when he shows up. Does that mean that we just get to put our name on a church roll and do whatever we want until we die or until he returns? Is your baptismal certificate an insurance policy that you just hand at the gate? Have you ever read the obituaries? Seen, Catholic Christian Church. I don't know that guy. Did God call me only for me to desert him? Or to make up my own way? Or to follow him? Look at verse 42 with me. The Lord answered, who then is the faithful and wise manager, whom the master puts in charge of his servants to give them their food allowance at the proper time? Jesus asks the question of Peter, who is the faithful and sensible steward whom the master will end up putting in charge? But notice the transition from servant to steward. A steward is one who manages something that belongs to somebody else. Think about it. Mayor Milo manages the city that belongs to its citizens. She is a steward. In verse 43, Jesus answers the question posed in verse 42. It will be good for that servant whom the master finds doing so when he returns. We are considered faithful when we are doing or following the will of Christ in our everyday lives. If I'm not trying to live according to God's will, then I'm not faithful. Does that seem unreasonable? No. Not when you consider what Jesus has done for me, what Jesus has done for you. That he willingly went to that cross, that he was willingly beaten to just a mere breath of his death. At this point in the parables, Jesus is also teaching degrees of reward in heaven. If we're faithful with little, we will receive a lot. I'm not even going to try to say I understand the degrees of reward in heaven. I don't think any of us truly do and won't until we get there. But suffice to say, he's teaching it here. So in verse 43 through 44 is where we really all want to be. We want to be right. We want to be that steward that is doing his will. But in verse 45 through 48, he gives us quite the chilling warning. But suppose the servant says to himself, my master is taking a long time in coming. And then he begins to beat the other servants, both men and women, and begins to eat and drink and get drunk. The point of verse 45 is that if we decide to disregard Jesus altogether and live our lives, once we've given our life to Christ, but just live it however we want, we're going to be in big trouble. Too many of us can call us Christians, but are not truly being faithful. I'm not talking about being perfect. None of us can do that. I'll be the first to admit I'm far from perfect. But truly trying to live for him. Jesus gives us the freedom to do what we want with our time. But all he asks is that you use it wisely and that you come to church. Jesus lets us spend our money, but he asks that we do it wisely and return a tenth of what he's blessed us with. If I pay my bills 1 out of every 4 times, am I being faithful? If I stay away from another woman 1 out of every 4 times, am I being faithful? I was hoping for a response. If I keep my promises and my commitments to my kids only 40% of the time, am I being faithful? If the bank gets your deposit right 7 out of the 10 times you make a deposit, is the bank doing a good job? Well, it depends on which way I guess that mistake goes. But think about it for a while. A faithful person will come to church. They will want to come to church. They will give. They will want to give. They will read and they will pray. They will love other people and they will do it because they want to. They will do it because they love Jesus. We all do what is important in life. We all find time to do what we want to do. But if you love Jesus and he is a priority, the priority in your life, you will find a way to do what he wants you to do. We need to take God seriously. Let's look at verse 46. The master of that servant will come on a day when he doesn't expect it. Now remember, the servant has just eaten all the food, drank all the wine, beat the living daylights out of the rest of the servants. But the master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect it, and at an hour he is not going to be aware of. He will cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the unbelievers. It's a severe punishment. Does the master look happy with the one who claimed Jesus but didn't live for him? We know that he is actually speaking in this parable where the servant is a believer. Because notice, after being punished in the most severe way, the person is cast out with the unbelievers. So the servant in this parable is a believer. So as we kind of get ready to close here tonight, I want to look at verse 47 and 48. The servant who knows the master's will and does not get ready or does not do what the master wants will be beaten with many blows. But the one who does not know and does things deserving punishment, the one that does not know but does things deserving punishment will be beaten with just a few blows. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. Notice there in verse 7, the more we know, the more accountable we are to God. If you have given your life to Christ, and you are making no effort to truly live for him, or to be faithful to him, you will face a much harsher punishment than one who is ignorant of God's ways. Verse 48 kind of closes with this thought. From everyone who has been given much, much will be required. What are those of us who are already Christians doing with what God has given us? He's given all of us, each and every one, so much. What are we doing with it? I'm sorry to say that there are some people that call themselves Christians that don't do anything with it. He's given us an amazing salvation. Hebrews 2 verse 3 in part says, how will we escape if we neglect a great salvation? I know you all care about each other. If you know a brother or a sister that's struggling, who's having trouble. Be there for them. But my question tonight, for those of you who are Christian, are you ready? Are you ready? For those of you who are not Christian, who have not accepted Christ as your Savior, the Bible says you're not ready yet. But here's your chance. Do you want to get ready to live for Christ? If you do, come see me after worship. See Dan. We'll help you out. Tonight for communion, Tim Ransom is going to talk to us and lead us in today.